Welcome. Don't even start. So we're going to cover the new 600 Speedlite today. Anybody here have one yet? Yep. 2, 3, 4, 7, 12? All right. We're going to kind of cover, I'm going to talk a little bit of just kind of spec features, and then we're going to cover a little bit of the wireless stuff. The flash system for Canon hasn't really changed. We're still using what we call ETTL, actually the secondary version now, of electronic through the lens metering. So when you take a picture, the camera, the flash will actually fire off 2 flashes. You don't see the first one. The first one is a pre-flash, and it sends out this burst of light, and that goes, flashes off the camera flash. The light comes back in through the lens, and the camera looks at the reflectivity of that pre-flash. And if it's a dark subject, a bright subject, how far away it is. It calculates where the lens is set at, and everything talks to each other. The lens knows what flash is on the camera, the flash knows what lens is on the camera, and everything knows what it's hooked up to. After that pre-flash comes back through the lens, it makes a calculation saying this is how much light you need to send out to light our subject. And so then that camera makes that calculation, sends that information up to the flash charges up its flash bulb, fires it out, and the actual picture is taken. Now that happens all in a split second. You don't see the pre-flash because it all happens so very quickly. Same setup works with wireless flash. When you fire it off, the wireless flashes on the outside are set up to receive the, information from that pre-flash, and then everything is sent out to be able to shoot. So you can do types of wireless shooting with. Now the new 600 Speedlite is both an infrared and a radio transmitter. So we have now, it's the first professional Speedlite that has basically, and I don't want to use, or eliminate, but Pocket Wizard or a radio popper radio flash system built in. The new flash itself is our new 600EX-RT. There is, when you buy one, you'll see in the owner's manual, it'll say this manual is for either the RT or just the normal 600EX. In the USA and in most countries, you cannot buy a 600EX-RT without the radio system. There are a few countries in the world that the radio frequency was not approved in, and so there they can purchase just a 600EX. But for the most part, you'll be purchasing a 600EX-RT. There is an instant rebate right now running on this flash, and if you buy it with a DSLR body, that rebate will double. So if you're looking to buy a body or anything like that. So what's new with the flash? Well, from the 580 flash, which was our old top-of-the-line flash, the new 600 now has a guide number of 2 meters farther. So the distance of this flash is now 60 meters at ISO 100 at exposure. All the Canon Speedlights are rated. First 2 digits are the guide number at ISO 100 in meters. The head itself has a longer flash head to it. It will cover a range from 24 millimeters wide out to 200 millimeters. The old flash was 24 to 105. So if you think of an old mag light, flashlight, before we had all these LED flashlights, the old mag lights, when you twisted the barrel, it went from a wide beam down to a focused beam. Well, now with the 200 millimeter setting on here, we can focus that beam nice and far and tight. It still has the 14 millimeter little diffuse pop it down. So if you're going to be doing really wide angle work, if you're going to be shooting with wide angle lenses, you can do that. It still has the bounce card. So if you're going to be doing bounce, you can still bounce your light still a little bit forward. You can still buy any of the Rogue or Honel bigger bounce cards, or use your hand, or use a business card, or 3x5 inch, index card. 4 AA batteries. It still has the battery port, so if you want to buy the CPE4 battery pack, you can run on 4 AA batteries along with another 6 AA batteries in the pack. Still has a PC socket on there, and it still has the little hookup for the Japanese flash bracket. The back of the flash has been changed a little bit. It's more of an LCD layout. On the old 580s, there was a lot of press and hold a button to change cycles and stuff, and we'll do a little demo. I'll set up a little flash system here in a second for you guys. On the infrared system, which means the pop-up flash from the T3i, T4i, 60D, and the 7D. The pop-up flash from those cameras can trigger any flash in our current lineup wirelessly. full ETTL. That was the models, those were the Rebel T3i, T4i, 60D, and 7D. Those 4 models, its little pop-up flash can trigger any flash in our current lineup that can be a slave. Range on the pop-up flash is about 40 feet indoors and about 30 feet outside. So that's how far away the farthest flash can be. If you're outside, and that's how we did this shot. And this is a Rebel shot. These are Rudy's kids, if you've ever sat in on one of Rudy's classes. But holding a little flash, you can see that even the flash is angled, so the sensor's back towards the camera. So we get a shot like this. So you can do that with the 270EX2 flash, the 320s, the 430s, the 580s, any flash that can be a slave. The 600EX is a master or a slave, either in the infrared system, which is line of sight, just like a TV remote. You got to point it at the TV to be able to change the channels. Or the new 600EX-RT also is radio now, which means it can now be triggered by a radio frequency, either from a 600, or we have a new transmitter, which is a STE3, which is a radio transmitter. So to do the radio frequency, you have to have either a 600 on your camera or the new STE3 transmitter. Canon will guarantee about 98 feet distance-wise to be able to trigger your flashes on the radio frequencies. On infrared, it's still about 40 feet indoors, about 30 feet outdoors. Now, I've tested, myself, Rudy, Rick Burke, who used to come in here, we've tested them at 200 feet. Had a few photographers claim about 250 feet. But Canon will guarantee 98 feet if you want to read the technical notes in the owner's manual. I've tested much farther than that. So that's no problem on that one. I wouldn't be anywhere hesitant if someone's like, I have a shoot where I need to light a subject that's 150 feet away, but Canon only says 94 feet or 98 feet. Yeah, go for it, shoot it, no problem. Don't be worried. So the flashes themselves are also transceivers. So they actually can also trigger, and we're going to show you some link shooting stuff that you can do with these flashes also, which is kind of neat. And we'll cover that in a little bit. Beyond that, the 600EX-RT is about 20% faster recycle than the 580s. And a little more rugged hot shoe too than the 580s. Still weather sealed. So if you have a weather sealed body with a weather sealed lens, flash can be fully weather sealed also. It will also ship with a gel holder, and so you can put gels on there if you want to. And it will come with one gel. It's an amber gel, but it'll have a book. So if you want to buy any of the Rogue or any of the Hano flashes or the Rogue gels for it. So we also have in our lineup, we have obviously the 580 Mark II. We have the STE2, which is an infrared only transmitter. So this transmitter is only going to trigger infrared by systems. We have the STE3, which is radio only. And then we have our 430s, and we have a few other flashes that are set up. I'm going to first go through the infrared kind of setup on the 580s and on a couple other flashes here. And then we'll kind of go into the radio system too, because I know the class is basically mostly on the 600, but I want to kind of cover a little bit on both, because it does do both. And in certain situations, sometimes the infrared works better than the radio shooting-wise. So when we set up our flashes, you want to designate one for master, or you're going to designate it for slave. The controls on the back of the flashes or on the back of the transmitters, basically in the Canon world of wireless flash, is we're going to set up an A flash, a B flash, and sometimes a C flash, or in groups. Your A flash is always your main light. Your B flash will always be a side light or secondary light, and then a C flash is what we call a hair light for like a studio type of portrait. If you want all the flashes to fire at the same power, set them all to A. Or you can set them to B if you want to, but A is what we call our main flash system. This is really kind of the coolest thing that a lot of people kind of forget about or even don't know about, especially if you're shooting with multiple shooters, is that when you set up these remote flashes, you're not setting up any settings. You're not setting any exposure settings, any power settings. You're basically just turning the flash on and telling it to wait to receive a signal. which means if we take this entire front row, actually we could take everybody in this classroom. And if I set up 3 flashes up here with a model, and Steve could be our model, and we had 3 flashes set up. And this side of the room says, you know what? I want all my pictures to have a little bit more light from the A group. So we have 3 flashes on Steve, A, B, and C. This side of the room is like, you know what? I want more flash from the B group than the A group. So they power up all they've changed their settings so the B side has a higher ratio. And we can all sit and take pictures. And those flashes will react to every one of our cameras individually. So you don't have to go over to the flash and change something. You are changing that flash's power via the camera. On the infrared setup, it says you can have as many people firing the camera and you can have as many flashes as you want in the system. If we want to buy 200 flashes and we want to have everybody in here fire off all 200 flashes with your pop-up flash from your Rebel T3i, no problem. As long as they're within 40 feet of you. And then you can have everybody change your camera settings, you can change your shutter speeds, you can change your apertures, you can change your outputs of your flashes. And you can control that. So, and I'll give you a little demonstration in a little bit. With the 600, with the 600 Speedlite, the 580 Speedlite, you actually add the capability of controlling what we call the C group, which is like a hair light kind of control. And I'm going to show you some slides and kind of walk you through that. When you have a flash on the camera, doesn't matter if it's a 600 or if it's a 580, you can have this light be part of the picture or not part of the picture. Same thing holds true with the pop-up flash. You can have the on-camera flash be part of the picture or not part of the picture. One caveat is if you're in the infrared system, you will still see a pop of light come off the flash. And that's the pre-flash firing, and that's also, that's the pre-flash, and that is the white light infrared signal going out to the other flashes. So I'll have customers, photographers, come up to me or call me or email me, John, I'm shooting an infrared system, and I'm still seeing light come off the pop-up flash, or from my 580. What's going on? Well, that's just the trigger. It's not actually part of the picture. If you test it, you'll see that. So yes, you can turn off that head. So it's basically just a master trigger. And that works with both the radio or the infrared or the pop-up flashes. So you can set up your flashes and set up them that way too. One thing a lot of people forget about, and we're going to kind of cover a little bit of everything, is that our macro lights are also masters. So either the ring light or the twin light can trigger a secondary flashes for a little wireless macro studio. So if you wanted to set up a flash and backlight a flower, or if you wanted to do a little bit of side lights for some insects or anything, you can definitely do that also. So that's available too. So you can do a little bit of macro work, and that's how we achieve this shot. So we've got a little bit of side light coming in from the corner. So what's our basic setup? And then again, this is going to be an infrared setup. Even though it says 580s up here on the screens, you imagine them to be 600s too. It doesn't matter. So we have the camera. We have a master flash on the camera. The light is disabled. And then we have group A and then group B sitting into umbrellas, firing actually into umbrellas. So I always try to put my flashes, A's on my left, A's on my left, B's on my right. Because when I'm sliding through the menu, and as my menu slides, I'm like, you know what, I want a little more power to my A flash. It's just intuitive to go to the left because that's where my flashes are. And if I want more power to my B flashes, I can slide that to the right, and you'll see in a couple slides on how that works out. Again, no flash from the on camera. So it doesn't matter if it's the pop-up flash on a T3i, T4i, 60 or 70. That's a 5D Mark III with a 580 or a 600 on there, and the head's turned off. That light is not part of the picture. So here's our picture, A, B, and C. Or basically just A and B right now. Right now, the way this is set is that our ratios are, our B flash is 8 times more powerful than the A flash. And that's why there's more light on the left-hand side of Heidi's face. If we start changing this, so this was 8:1, this is 4:1. And in the menu system, you dial this back, and it's just a ratio. Now you can see where it says A ratio B. That's why I always put my A's on one side and my B's on the other side. because now this is 8 times more powerful than my A flash, 4 times more powerful. Here's 2 times more powerful. There's 1-to-1. And so that's how our flash works. So we could shoot this, and you can control this light, and everybody's cameras can control the light separately. So let's say the front row here likes 8-to-1. Next row back likes 4-to-1, 2-to-1, and 1-to-1. As long as we don't all go 3, 2, 1, click, this system works just fine. So if you're doing a wedding shoot or a setup and you had multiple shooters and you just popped up your flash and your camera, or you had a transmitter or a master flash, we can do all of that. We can go the other way too. Here's 2-to-1, 8 is a little more powerful. 4-to-1, 8-to-1. So now her right side of the face is a little more powerful. Again, this is all being controlled in the camera. The flashes are just sitting there reacting to whoever's camera is telling them to react. We can also go into the menu and engage what we call A ratio B with the C group. This top option means they all fire at the same power. Second option means we're ratioing between just 2 flashes. Bottom ratio is 3 groups. So now we can go into what we call our group C exposure compensation. And now you can dial this in either greater or less. So now our setup is group B, group A, and then now we're going to add a third light. We're going to add a little group C. And on the flashes themselves is how you determine what flash is an A or B or C. You just, on the menu of the flash, you just designate it. You know, I'm a slave flash, but I'm an A group, a B group, or a C group. And so now we put a little umbrella on a little light stand with another flash, and then now we can get a hair light. So here's the 1-to-1 with a -3 composition. So we've dialed the power of that hair light way back. So 1-to-1, -3 exposure on that third flash. And now as I increase the power of the flash of that hair light, you can see her hair brightens up. So there's 0, there's +1, there's +2, and there's +3. So now we can have that kind of control and dial in how we want the light, and we're always playing with the light. And so this is an easy kind of setup with a camera and 3 off-camera flashes. Questions, sir?
Yeah, John, coming back one step when you did 8-to-1, 1-to-1 like that, is there any way that you could use the camera like a strobe meter, like if you could put like a spot on, let's say, the left side and the right side to see what the difference is in terms of f-stop like that and what the lights are actually doing? The
question was, can you engage the flashes to do like a stroboscopic like pulse?
Like a strobe meter.
Yeah, strobe meter goes bzzz. Yep, flash meter. On the flashes, yes, you can. A lot of times it's the depth of field preview button, which has been pre-designated to do that. And you can get whatever, all the flashes will fire, and they'll do like a pulse. And it's like a bzzz, and it kind of gives you almost a constant light to kind of see how the light is falling onto your subject.
But it's not only to see, but to see what the exposure is.
Not so much there's not really an exposure meter. It's not like a light meter where you can walk up and get a spot meter off her face to see what your exposure would be. That one that's where you kind of walk it in to figure out what's going to be best for you. But I can't point the camera at her cheek and take a reading off her face. If you set the camera to manual and you engage the kind of the pulse where it kind of lights up the thing, lights up your subject, the light meter and they will probably get fooled too much to actually be able to tell you what a proper exposure. You would just have to start off and say, okay, I'll start off at f8 at 125th of a second, and we'll go from there. So
they have a model light too.
Modeling light is what I'm talking about, that kind of burst light. So a lot of the flashes now are controlled by the flash control menu in the camera, and we'll kind of walk through and show you that in a little bit. So here's some sample situations, and we'll go into the 600 next here. So here's just some examples. 2 soft boxes, 580s, a hair light, just things you can do with wireless speed lights. A lot of people, even event photographers, wedding photographers are starting to shoot, events instead of bringing the strobe packs in there and the big lights and stuff. They're starting to bring speed lights and using a clamp to clamp this to a wall or clamp this up onto a DJ stand and to light up an area. You can buy a lot of soft boxes now are designed for speed lights. Lastolite, different companies now are making little small soft boxes and pretty large soft boxes for just Speedlights themselves. So 1D Mark III, you know, again, just on-camera flash, and it's all ATTL. You know, you don't really have to worry about all your flash settings or anything like that. Everything is just done, this all ATTL through the camera and through the lens. So we can have a lot of fun with having that kind of control and shooting with, you know, a couple little Speedlights. Now, certain situations come upon where they say, well, you know, John, I'm shooting an all-day event, and you know, after about 8 hours of doing it, my flashes are starting to overheat and they're starting to shut down on me. Well, the flashes will shut down if they get too hot. You know, we're not going to let you go out and just destroy flashes. They will shut themselves down if they get too hot. Now, once they cool off, they'll repower themselves up. If you're shooting in a situation where they do get too hot and they start powering off, then it's probably time to look into some actual strobes. You know, they're not, whatever application you're using, you're outpowering the cameras themselves, or out the flashes themselves, excuse me. So, like I said, you know, sample situations, you know, sometimes, you know, when to use flashes, when to use available light. So it's a lot of fun, and it's a very easy setup to do. So we'll talk about and go into the 600 Speedlite and cover what the new Speedlite is actually doing for you guys now too. So this is our first now Speedlite with a built-in radio transmitter built into the flash system. So there's no need to buy a third-party radio trigger to fire these flashes. It is a two-way system. It can be the 600EX-RT is either a master or a slave, and you don't, like I said, it gives us the ability to move the flashes away from the camera and not be line of sight. So I can put them back behind a garbage can. I can put them behind the wheel of an aircraft. I don't have to have them pointed back towards me. I can hide them inside of a softbox, whatever I need to do. So wedding, portrait, photojournalism, whole bunch of different ranges. We talked a little bit more earlier about the power outputs. And the only limitation that the radio frequency really has is that the total number of flashes can only be 15. So as many of these flashes as you guys want to buy, I know today, if you want to do a radio setup, you can't buy more than 15 and fire them all at the same time. Infrared, you can go out and buy 100 of them, that's fine. But with the radio setup, the maximum number of flashes in the system has to be 15 flashes. A couple of cool things it does, there's a remote shutter release, which I'll talk about in a second, with the system. We do have a new transmitter, it's the STE3, and again, total number of flashes could be 15 with the transmitter. We'll talk a little about link camera shooting, and the system can be fully controlled from the camera itself, so that's no problem there. Here's the new menu system for the 5D Mark III and the 1DX. It's a little more laid out this way versus before it was a little more line menu driven. It's now more boxed out. This icon with the little antenna with the two little arrows next, or the little parentheses next to it, is the radio setting. The little lightning bolt is infrared, so you can do both. You can't do both at the same time. So I can't have a few flashes fire radio and a few flashes fire infrared. It's all got to be infrared, or it's all got to be radio. No camera right now has a radio trigger built in. So you do have to have something on the camera to do a radio wireless flash system. If you want to do infrared, that's fine. We have 4 cameras that pop-up flash can trigger these flashes. But if you want to do radio, you have to have something on the camera, either a 600 or the new transmitter. A couple key things you want to know about is there's a 4-digit code that you make up. You know, this is 4828, that's a little more complicated than I like. Usually mines are like 1,000. All your flashes or all your transmit, everything has to have the same channel on there, or the same code, I should say. We just call it a radio ID. And once everything is linked, it'll memorize that and go all day long. Once you even if you pull the batteries out, put the batteries back in, it'll still memorize that code. So, and then you can go into that type of setup. So let me show you what we can kind of do with this and how we can all set this up. Any questions on anything so far I've covered? Yes?
So if you have the 600EX-RT or the STE3 transmitter on your camera body,
Yes.
can you trigger older flashes as well, radio, with radio transmission?
The question was, if you have an STE3 transmitter or a 600 Speedlite on the camera, can you trigger other flashes?
Other Canon flash.
Other Canon flashes. The answer is yes and no. With the 600, since it is a master or slave either in the infrared or the radio frequency, if you switch it to infrared, you can trigger any flash that's designed to be a slave that's in the Canon lineup. So that would equal the 270EX2 flash, the 320EX flash, any of the 4 series Speedlights that can be slaves, which they all can be. So anything that's EX, so the 420, the 430, the 430EX2. Or you can trigger any of the 5 series, the 550s, the 580s, the 580 Mark II flashes.
But it means that the 600EX-RT has to be set to infrared.
It has to be set to infrared.
Yeah, no, I'm not interested in that.
Okay, if you want to do radio, the only flash right now that's radio is the 600.
Oh, so they all have to be 600.
If you want to do radio, because we do not have a module that will make a 580 flash a radio trigger.
So I guess that means that my next question is that would Pocket Wizards then be interchangeable with your STE3?
The question was, is the Pocket Wizard interchangeable with the STE3? No, they all run on different frequencies. So, all right. You can see this because of the wide world of systems on the camera. You can change the colors, but normally, if it's green, it's master. If it's amber, it's slave. So it's a nice way of going through there. So as we go into a radio slave, the flashes will link up. And if I have the same code on there, which we've entered an actual code in these flashes, and if you turn the camera on, and we can go into the menu system here, and what I will do is just go in here and make sure my IDs are all the same. It's 4000. And once you're set, you'll see this little link light up green. That means that you're linked. Once you set up your IDs, which I just enter my code in to whatever I want to be, and I just pick a code. Once you turn them on, they're set. So we're set to an ID of 4000, which is fine. So you can have the little blinking light in front, either be turned on to blink at you to tell you that the batteries are cycled and ready to go. That's how the 580s and the 430s have always worked. You can turn that off, and you can actually, since these can be hidden now inside of a softbox, you can actually get an audio tone coming off your 600 or your little transmitter to give you a beep when your flashes are recycled. So there's a two-way communication. So I don't want to sit and point these at you guys to blind you and stuff, but
What's the quickest you can get that to recycle at the lowest power?
The lowest power? I haven't tested. What was the quickest I can cycle this at the lowest power? I haven't checked. I'm not 100% sure. I've tried out on what the quickest recycle time on it, what different power settings are.
Yeah, in other words, the bigger question is if you're shooting, could you ever shoot like 3 or 4 frames a second and get it to recycle that quick?
Yeah. I mean, no. The question, can they cycle fast enough to shoot? If we put it on continuous drive. So pretty quick.
Those are flashing also?
Those are flashing too. Oops. So my battery's recycled. So I'll be honest, I'm using the cheapest AA batteries I could find. So if I was going to do this in a normal real shoot, I'd probably buy some rechargeable AA batteries or lithium AAs. For the most part, I always use the rechargeables because they're better for the environment and they're not one-time use. So
Does it make a difference?
All 3 of these flashes are 600EX.
yeah, all 3 of these are 600 and we're set to radio right now. So I don't have to see these flashes to trigger them.
Do the batteries affect the recycle time?
The question was, do the batteries affect the recycle time? Yes, very much. Alkaline AAs that you buy anywhere, 12 of them for $10, probably the slowest. From there, rechargeable AAs are probably the next best and probably the best way to go because of the fact that you can recharge them and recharge them and recharge them and keep using them. If you need the quickest and fastest recycle time, you want to use lithium AAs, the Energizer E2 batteries. Now they're one-time use and they're expensive. but those will recycle faster than any other setups.
Is the 600 an improvement on not having the batteries overheat? Because I find that a lot with my 580s.
We never got the question was, does the 600 overheat less than the 580s? We never got a temperature rating from Japan saying this is at this temperature that it'll shut down. They will shut down eventually. I haven't had done enough testing to really see if I fire them side by side, if the 580s will shut down faster than the 600s. I'm going to presume they're going to be about the same as the 580s. If you find themselves shutting down a lot, you're probably going to want to look into some strobes versus the Speedlights. You're kind of getting outside that envelope of their usability. So.
Also, in a situation like that, John, is there any kind of warning light that pops up at you that's saying, hey, you are shooting a little bit too fast and slow down?
Yeah, the question was, is there a warning light that will come up to tell you that you're getting too hot? Yeah, there'll be it'll get a temperature icon. So through the camera, I can, and we can go through the menu system if you want, but you can change your ratios if you want to, all that, just like you could with your 600s. The other neat thing with this setup is that they're also transceivers. And you can set up what we call a transceiver. And I can hold a flash in my hand, and I can mount this camera anywhere I want. And I can push the button on the back of the flash and trigger the camera.
That's only with the new 600?
That's only with the new 600s or the new transmitter, the STE3.
Can you disable that flash?
Yes, I can turn this head off.
Oh, if you put the STE3 on there.
Is that a mode?
That is just an option that we can do, and it's in the menu, so I don't want to go into there right now. But I can. So this flash isn't firing. I can have that flash that's on the camera be part of the picture. I can turn that head off too. So if I just want to put this camera as a remote on the back of a backboard with a suction cup mount. I had one photographer hide a camera behind the pastor at a wedding in a bouquet of flowers. An assistant was just tripping the camera during the ceremony saying, okay, here's the first kiss, and they got the first time they've ever been able to get a shot, from behind. Because obviously if you've ever been a wedding photographer, they frown upon you going up on stage behind here.
Can you change the camera settings for the flash?
You can't change the question was, can you change the camera settings from the flash? No. That'd be kind of neat though. Noted. This is also kind of cool. It's too dark in here, so.
Two views.
So now we have two views. Is it press and they fire at the exact same time? There's a little delay. Most of it for the pre-flash and the autofocus, but for the most part, I can fire this camera. I can put this on a remote. Now I put an 8 gig card in there. We're doing that same wedding shoot. Yeah, most of the shots are going to be junk, but if I don't have an assistant to trigger a camera, and I'm just the one person shooting the wedding, I can hide a camera up behind the bouquet of flowers and get that first kiss from the other angle. I can turn the head off and be part of the picture, or I can have the flash be part of the exposure if I want to.
So the maximum will be 15 cameras?
Maximum 15 cameras. So if you want to do the matrix picture, yes, it's maximum 15 cameras. Because that's come up before. Question way in the back. The question was, does the flash do the same function as ST3 as what we're doing now? Yes. The transceiver, the ST3 is a transceiver, so I could put one on my camera and have that be my remote slave.
So instead of getting one flash and ST3,
You
you can just get 2 flashes?
can just get 2 flashes. Yep. Question up front.
So I have a question. I mounted a Pocket Wizard Mini.
Yep.
And for my 580s.
Mm-hmm.
And the minute that I mount the 600 on that Mini, I lose the ETTL. It's like a full blown out picture.
Mm-hmm.
Is that going to be corrected with a fix to Canon or Pocket Wizard, or we don't know?
The question was, with the Pocket Wizard Minis, with the 600s, with the radio frequency and stuff, is that they're firing at full power. And is that a Canon fix or Pocket Wizard fix? I don't know yet. I know Pocket Wizard and Canon are both looking into it, and it's from the last few years. You'd think that we hate each other. No, we're still working together trying to fix it, because there's a lot of Pocket Wizards out there. So they're still working to figure out why the frequency changed or something like that with the new. You can with the minis.
Because the minute you put that 600 on there, it's like the camera doesn't even know that the 600's on there.
Right, and I don't know why that's happening. So I don't know why that frequency is happening with that setup. So maximum of 15 cameras to do what we're doing right now, or if we want to do radio, maximum of 15 flashes. Question in the back.
The previous diagram did you have the umbrellas set up?
Yeah.
So if you had the SD3 mounted and the two umbrellas were 600EX models, the actual built-in flash on the camera, can you use that as a fill?
No. The question was, can you with a transmitter on here, can you pop the flash up and be a fill? No. It's going to be, you have to have the flash down, so you can't do it as a fill light. You'd have to put a 600 on here if you want to do radio and set it up that way. If you wanted to pop the flash up, switch these to infrared, if you had, like, say, a 7D or a 60D or run the newer Rebels, yeah, then you could have that pop-up flash be part of the picture and do a fill light and have those 600 fired, as long as they're line of sight, or since on the infrared system it is line of sight. Yes, they'll bounce off the walls in a small room like this because, we've all had a TV remote and point at the ceiling, it still changes the channel. Same kind of thing happens. But via the radio, it's got to be, there's no way of having a fill light unless you put a 600 on here and dial the power back on it. You can do that. So what are the limitations? You think, well, everything's great, John, it's awesome. Which it is. There are some limitations. What we're doing right now, no problem. The new cameras that were launched this year, which were the 5D Mark III, the 1DX, and the new Rebel T4i, they have a new intelligent hot shoe on the camera. So this hot shoe on these 3 new cameras that we launched this year are more intelligent, which means I can trigger that camera with the 600 on there or with the new transmitter through the hot shoe. If you have a 7D, a 1D Mark III, a 50D, any of the older cameras, they have the older hot shoe. On the side of the flash, there's a little port and there's a cable you can buy. And the model number of the cable escapes me, but I think it's STRN3. But it'll plug into here and then plug into the remote socket of the camera, which is the N3 socket, which the Rebels don't have, but the 50D has, the 7D has, the 5D has, the 5D Mark II, the 1Ds have that little remote socket. So you can buy a cable, plug it into here, and then put that your 7D as a remote if you want to, and trigger it. So if you want to do the remote shooting like this, that's what you have to have that kind of control. You'll have to have by that little cable on there. Also, if you want to do radio slaves, or do a radio frequency setup, and you have a 7D, or you have a 5D Mark II, there's a caveat with that, is that, and the wording is very tricky, Canon will guarantee the exposure of your setup when you're shooting your older camera with a radio frequency setup, will guarantee the exposure, but your sync speed will drop by 1 stop. So if you have a 5D Mark II and you have 3 600s and a transmitter on your camera, and you want to do a radio flash setup with a 5D Mark II, the fastest shutter speed you can shoot for guaranteed exposure will be 100th of a second. Normally it was 200th of a second. If you want to do a 600 on your camera and you want to trip 580s, or you want to have a 600 on your camera and trip 600s via the infrared frequency or the infrared signal, there's no loss. You can do full sync speed and have high speed sync. It's only when you're using the older cameras and you have a radio setup, you do not have high speed sync, and you do not, your guaranteed exposure will drop by a full stop. So on a 7D, your sync speed will be 1/25th of a second. Now, that being said, is that I've shot it. It'll let you shoot up to full sync speed, and it looks really, really good. And I can't tell a difference. It's just Canon can't guarantee it. So we're not going to guarantee you can shoot at 2/50th of a second with a radio frequency flash setup. Will it work? Yes. Can you shoot that high? Yes. Are we going to guarantee the exposures? Unfortunately, no. The question was, can you set up the IDs and the modes and stuff via your master camera? No, you have to go over to those flashes and at least turn them on to radio and tell them what channel they're going to be on.
But then when you turn this on, they will turn to slave automatically.
No, they will not go automatically to slave. You have to tell them to be slaves.
So you hit the...
You have to hit the button to save. Question over here? No. Question over here.
Yeah, is the power consumption for the radio system
Minimal. The power consumption for the radio system is very minimal. So it takes very little power to run it. So here's the external Speedlite control menu. And flash firing, this is enabled or disabled. A few situations where you might want to disable your hot shoe, you can disable it, or you can enable it. ETTL metering, we'll usually leave it in evaluative for most situations. Flash sync speed. When you're in AV mode, the camera wants to blend the ambient light of the room with your on-camera flash. If you leave it in auto, and if it's a really dark room, you might experience some really slow shutter speeds, below a 60th of a second. You can tell it, you know what, don't drop below a 60th of a second. Since this is a 5D Mark III, my fastest sync speed normally is a 200th of a second. I can shoot normal with flash. Guess I have to hold that in there a little tighter. So you can tell it, I don't want you to drop below a 60th of a second. Or, you know what, you can just say, don't ever drop below a 200th of a second when I'm shooting in AV mode. Auto, it's going to float. It'll go anywhere from a 200th down to a full second sometimes. If it's a really dark room and you want to blend the ambient light of the flash with the ambient light of the hockey arena or something else. So here's our flash function settings.
Sean, could you ever not be in AV mode?
Yeah, you can be in program, you can be TV, you can be in manual, whatever you want. It's just when you're shooting in AV mode, you're picking the aperture, and the camera's going to pick the shutter speed. And that's where you say, okay, I don't want you to drop below a 60th, because I might be hand-holding shooting. This came up real important with the original 5D, because a lot of people were like, well, I want to shoot AV at f8 in a wedding, and I'm getting a 1 second exposure. What's going on? Well, you're telling the camera system, because Canon's flash system is dedicated to tell you, when you shoot in AV, I want you to blend for the ambient light of the room. So, or the ambient light of the situation. All right. So here's our flash function settings. We still have full manual if you want to. So if you don't want to use ETTL, you don't have to. Multi-stroboscopic, so you can tell it just to take one picture every quarter of a second for half power. And then we have auto external flash metering, which uses the little flash sensor in front of the camera, or manual. So you're setting everything full manual like our old potato mashers. So otherwise ETTL. Here's our wireless settings. We have full off, we have radio transmission, and we have infrared. And we'll put in infrared for right now. Zoom head, we can have it be auto, or you can dial in an exact millimeter of your lens if you want to. First curtain, second curtain, or high-speed sync. Now remember, with high-speed sync turned on, I can shoot at any shutter speed I want. I can go, normally you're at your flash sync speed, which means I can't shoot faster than the camera will allow me. A 5D series and a Rebel series is a 200th of a second. The fastest you can shoot with flash. With high-speed sync turned on, you can shoot at any shutter speed you want. But when you go above that sync speed, your distance to your flash starts greatly reduced. You can shoot at 1,000th of a second, but your distance is about 2 feet in front of you, 2 to 5 feet. You can shoot at 8,000th of a second. You're at about a foot in front of you. Okay, so with high-speed sync turned on, you just limit yourself, or turned off, excuse me, then you're just limited to the fastest shutter speed you can shoot. It does not hurt to leave it on all the time, if you want to shoot below that. Here's our flash exposure compensation, so I can turn my power of my flash up or down, plus or minus 3 stops, just like a dimmer switch. I can bracket if I want to. So I want to take 3 pictures, one at two stops under flash power, one at 0, one at +2. So if you want to bracket that way for flashes. On the optical system, if there are multiple shooters shooting in the same area, I can have all my flashes set to group 1. Steve's flashes can be set to group 2. And we won't trigger each other's flashes. You can have a maximum number of 4 people firing in the same area. This is a limitation in the infrared system. If you have more than that, then you're going to have to share flashes. This just means you see the little 3 lines coming off the flash head. That means that flash head is part of the picture. That means that flash head is disabled. So if we were in a master system. Here's our A, B, and C groups. So we'll just put our A, B, and C on here. And then now you can see, okay, I want my B flashes to be twice as powerful. 4 times or 8 times. Or I want my A's to be 4 times, 8 times more powerful than my B's. And if I wanted to change my C, I can dial my hair light. You remember the shots of Heidi? I can dial her hair light up or down. So, all right. Yes, sir.
If it's 4 to 1, you haven't increased the 4, you've reduced the 1, or which is the...
You're actually increasing the B, so you're going to go 4 times more powerful than 1. So you're not actually decreasing A, you're increasing B. Good question. So the question was, what are you doing when you're changing the ratios? Are you decreasing A, or you're actually, whatever way you're dialing it, you're increasing that power. So, flash custom settings. So on the indicator on the flash, now there's 23 of them, so you can dial through if you want to customize this. The nice thing on the new 600 is that on the flash itself, it will actually tell you what you're changing. Before it was you had to have the owner's manual to know what you're doing. So you know that, custom function 3-1 was something. Now it'll actually tell you that on the flash it labels it out. But we'll just kind of go through them real quick. I'm not going to spend, so if there's a distance indicator on the flash, defaults in meters. You can change it to feet if you want to. Auto power off. Enable or disabled, so the flash will power itself down. Here's your modeling flash. The question that came up earlier about having a flash, what button do you push to engage the modeling flash? Test firing button, the depth of field preview button. Flash exposure bracketing, either cancel, it means auto enable or disabled. So if you're going to bracket your flash, which means one flash, your first picture is, let's say, at exposure. Your second picture is 1 stop under flash exposure. Third picture is 1 flash over. If you would disable this, that means as you take pictures, unless you physically go in there and turn that feature off, every third picture will look really good. And you would be surprised on how many times this happens. Because I get a phone call and every third picture is really good. Were you bracketing? Well, yeah, a while ago. Have you turned your camera off ever since then? No, you're still bracketing. So if you enable it, it'll stop after the 3 pictures. Very good to know. Here's the sequence for the bracketing. You can either have it go at exposure minus plus or minus 0 plus. Flash metering mode. Here's where we can do the on-camera or on-flash metering system. Quick flash with continuous shot, which means it'll quickly recycle, but the power is going to be disabled or down. Test firing, when you press the test button, is it going to be a full power? Is it a 30-second power? AF assist beam, either enabled or disabled, which means when you're in a low light situation, there's a laser line infrared light that lights up to help out with the AF assist. Auto zoom for sensor size. So if you have an APS-C sensor or a full frame sensor, the flash will automatically adjust for that 1.6 crop sensor. Power off time. The slave flashes will fall asleep after 60 minutes or 10 minutes. Auto power off cancel, either within 8 hours or within an hour. And then this is if you're going to be using the external power. So if you're going to buy the external power pack. Do you want the flash to recycle with only the external power or with both internal and external?
What is the event that you want over the other?
With the external only, you can pull the batteries out of the flash. So then you just have the external power pack.
So the internal, you won't get,
right.
Won't use the internal batteries then.
It won't use the internal power. If you have it set to the option 1, it's only going to use your external power pack to recycle the flash.
External power is faster?
Yeah, you'll get, external power with internal power is the fastest because you're using 10 AA batteries to power that flash. So your recycle time is greatly improved, and the length of the time is greatly improved too. So you just have so much more power versus just the 4 AA batteries that are in the flash itself.
And with the 10, you could put lithium in also?
Oh yeah, you can put 10 lithiums in there if you want to. It's not cheap to do that, but you can definitely do it. Question? Does Canon have like a Nikon power pack? No, we don't. We're just using the AA version. There's some third-party companies out there building power packs for them. This is the beep. So if you can't see your flashes and you want an audio tone from your system to tell you that your remote flashes are ready to go, you can enable that. Light distribution, you can either go standard or you can say guide number priority or even coverage. Normally standard works fine, otherwise even coverage It kind of ignores your camera settings and kind of gives you an overfill. This is just kind of, hims and haws, but LCD panel illumination will on for 12 seconds. Oops. Come back. 12 seconds, always on or it never comes on. And then your battery checks, you can check the batteries of your flash. So if you hold the AF assist beam and the lamp buttons, it'll let you know what your battery check is. So those are just the custom functions that you can go in. Now this.
Which one is that for the slave units that to activate so they don't go to sleep? Will not, they don't go.
You can go in there in the menu and tell them not to fall asleep.
Which one was?
I would have to pull it up again.
Okay.
So, the question earlier was where's the second curtain? When you can't do second curtain with slaves, but if you want to do second curtain with just one flash on there, you have that ability to do that. So.
When you want to use the second curtain, is it like when you have a moving light source or something like that?
When the question is when do you want to use second curtain? Quickest example, if you think of a merry-go-round and you take the picture, basically the flash will look like it's streaking behind the subject versus in front of the subject. So normally I shoot most of my flash always in second curtain with just on-camera flash. So here's the radio setup. Everything's about the same. You can see it still held our -2/3 setting. Here's our channel. So radio channels, this isn't how many pictures or how many, this is just what channel the flashes are working on. The flash system is actually running on the same frequency as the old cordless 2.4 gigahertz cordless phone system, which no one's using anymore. So that's how we can use our radio transit and use it worldwide. So here's our ID. We just make this number up. So the only other change that that came into play with the radio system, there's our A and B, and there's our C. So you can go into now, instead of having, you can go into a group mode, and then now you can go in here and say, okay, I want groups A to be one stop under. I want groups, so now you have multiple flashes in different groups. So instead of having just A, B, and C, you can now do A, B, C, D, and E groups. This is only available on the new cameras. This isn't available on the 7Ds and the older cameras. So you can go in here and change all these as much as you want to and fire off your 5 flashes in different power settings for all those different levels. So. But the menu system is pretty easy and pretty simple laid out however you want to do it. So you have the option for either radio or infrared. The 600 Speedlights can be masters or slaves. Remember that any of the current flashes in the lineup are all slaves. The 580s were masters or slaves also. We did have a transmitter, at the STE2 transmitter, which is an infrared-only transmitter. So if you have a 5D Mark II and you don't want to have a big heavy flash on top of there, and you want to trigger that, you can.
What was that number again?
The infrared transmitter is an STE2. The radio transmitter is an STE3. Lots of numbers, I apologize. So, question, sir?
Do the 580s and the 600 have the same color temperature?
Yes. The question was, does the 580s and the 600s have the same color temperature? Yes, they do. The color temperature would be the white balance of the flashes. And if you set your white balance to the Canon flash icon, that's set up for our Speedlights. So if you want, if you're using studio strobes and stuff, you're probably better off using your Kelvin temperature setting. But if you're using Canon flashes, that's what that flash icon is set to, is the Canon Speedlight system. Do I know what the temperature is off the top of my head? No, I'm going to guess about between 52 to 5300 degrees Kelvin. So, the question was, is there a quick key to quickly jump into the menu system to change those flash settings? Because right now, you do have to go to external Speedlight control, flash function settings, and then you get to this menu, right? You can, and I'm going to back out here, and we're going to go to the last icon on the right, which is that My Menu. The My Menu came out about 5 years ago, and it's your own personal menu that you can create in the camera. And the one nice thing is that if you say display from my menu enabled, which means when you press the menu button in the back of your camera, and this is true in the 5D Mark II, the 1D Mark IV, the 7D, the 60D, the Rebels, the 50D, if you enable my menu, whenever you press menu, you bring up your menu first. And what you do is you go here to say register to my menu. And all these options are in my menu. So let's say, okay, there is 87, I'm not guessing, I'm just totally guessing, but okay, let's say 104 menu options in the camera. You probably only use 5 or 6 the most. So what we do is here, we'll go up here and say, okay, what do we use the most? Well, external speedlight control, bring that one up. Custom white balance, we do that quite often. Format's a good one. We'll find format down here. Let's see. Keep going down. All of our options here for autofocus, playback, rating. We like to do that. Rate our photos. Format card, always very important to do. And then here's our firmware options, bracketing, warning stuff. So all in there. So we back out of this menu, and then this is our little creative menu. If you're like, you know what, I want format at the top, that's fine. You can sort it. We can move format up to the top. So.
Yeah, but you still don't get to that. You still have to scroll down. If you go back to the external speed settings.
Yep.
You still have to go to that scroll down to get to that window.
Yes, you still have to. The question was, do you still have to scroll down to get to that window? Yes, you do.
Yes. Okay. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
You way on the new flashes to check the battery power?
Yep. You can press and hold the buttons. It'll give you a battery output.
Oh, which buttons?
It depends on which buttons you can program it to do, but it's usually the test lamp button.
Oh, okay.
And you can bring it up. It's in the menu system to tell you which one you want to do.
Right.
And you can't do that with 580 yet.
580s don't have that. That was one of those features where it was like, hey guys, that'd be really nice to do. Why don't you do it? So you can use the quick button in the back of the camera, or the quick screen we call it, to navigate around if you want to quickly change the flash exposure, which would be this icon right here. So you can navigate around here if you want to change flash exposure. But again, if you want to go into that flash control menu, you do have to use it through the menu system. So once you actually set it all up, once you set your power outputs and stuff, you're not really changing it a whole lot. You know, once you get your model lit up and your subject lit up, it's not as crucial as a run around as you might think it might be. So, all right, any other questions?
The high-speed sync, if you have it set to high-speed sync and you go below and you're shooting at 160th, will the high-speed sync automatically shut off?
Excellent question. The question was if you have high-speed sync turned on. And normally I think right now I do not have it turned on. Yes, I do. With high-speed sync turned on, you can shoot at any shutter speed you want. However, what is happening is when you're shooting at, let's say, 1,000th of a second, when you take a picture, and we're just talking one camera, one flash, one on-camera flash. When you take a picture, and those shutter blades are moving, and the first shutter leaves, and the second shutter leaves behind it and follows it up at 1,000th of a second later. So you press the shutter button down, click, and 1/1000th later, the second shutter follows it behind it. And it lights up the sensors because light comes through the lens, and that's your picture. Normal sync speed says, okay, the fastest you can follow it on a 5D, let's say, would be at 200th of a second, because it goes click, the flash is exposed, and the second curtain comes behind it. At high-speed sync, since at 1,000th of a second, it's following it so quickly, the flash isn't actually going pop. It's going pop, 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 1,000 times in a second to paint that sensor with light. That's why your distance is so much reduced with high-speed sync. Now, if you leave high-speed sync on all the time and you go down at your sync speed or below, it's fine. It's like turning it off. So you can leave it on all the time. So that was kind of a question and a misnomer that you had to constantly cycle high-speed sync on and off and on and off. Nope. You can turn high-speed sync on the flash, and it's just your responsibility to remember that if I'm changing my shutter speed or I'm shooting my shutter aperture, as long as you're at a 200th of a second or below, Doesn't matter if the system is smart enough to know that you're at sync speed or below.
So the symbol will still be there.
The symbol's still there, but that just says you've enabled me. But I'm gonna give. You can test it because I didn't believe the
Right.
engineers at first. I'm like, whatever. So 200th of a second, high speed sync on and off. It's the same exposure.
Getting full power.
Full power, no problem.
Okay.
So
That's great.
that was one of those things that it kind of came up and it kind of stopped us, and we're like, it should, but let's test it. And we found out that then there's no problem.
Excellent.
Question in the back.
You use it as a transceiver. Is there any way that you can get it to fire a very, very small camera, like a power shot, kind of like an L110 or 300 or something like that?
Question was, can you use the transceiver and the new flashes to trigger an old, or one of the power shots? Right now, no. I don't have any way of triggering a power shot.
Something very small.
Yep.
100,
No, there's no remote socket on there. The G12, G1X does have a remote socket, and you can buy third-party cable, I believe, that can go into a Pocket Wizard and trigger it. So, but not with our system. But if you want to put a little Pocket Wizard on a G12 or on a G1X, and buy I think there's a little cable that you can plug into that little Rebel socket, because the PowerShot G12 and G1X uses the same remote as the Rebels. So check in with that. I've never tried it, but I've heard people use it before.
So the same thing for the earlier Rebels, T1, T2?
Same thing with the earlier Rebels, T1. All the Rebels use the same. It's like it looks like a little headphone jack. But that's the plug for that, for those remotes. So, all right. Any other questions? Comments, concerns, wish lists, wants, needs. Canon's always listening.
Will you get a chance to cover the cover, the tungsten cover?
Oh, no, I didn't. We didn't bring our cover tungsten bulbs, but the tungsten cover is basically a gel cover. For the 600 Speedlights, they'll come with a new little holder and a gel that you can slide in there.
My question on it is if it's at, I believe I read that if you put it on, you can leave your auto white balance on auto, and it automatically will set it to tungsten. Is that correct?
Right. Because with the new tungsten holder or the new gel holder, and then you can get a gel holder for a 580, 430. You can get a gel holder. That's no problem. You can do that. With the gel holder, you can put a gel on there and then just leave the camera in auto white balance, and the flash is basically firing through an amber gel, and it'll balance out for tungsten bulbs.
So there'd be no advantage putting it on a tungsten setting.
Then it basically is because you're adding that yellow to take away the yellow for the flash.
Okay.
So,
Now you want to show it?
oh, you have it. Oh, of course we don't have tungsten bulbs in here, but. So there's a little wallet for your filters that you can hold, and then this is the actual gel holder, and this will just clip on. If you put it on the right way. There we go. And then you can just put the gels inside there. They'll just slide in and out there. So Hano has it set up. Rogue has it set up too, where you just, they're just little individual gels that you want to slide over there. So we've done blue gels, during daylight to make it look like it's nighttime, and then set it to, improper white balance. Then it looks like you're shooting daylight pictures at night. So kind of things you can do with that, kind of fun stuff. If you want to, if the model's wearing a red dress and you want a gray wall to become red, put a red gel on here and then bounce it off the wall. That wall now will become red during the exposure. So if you get a chance, a quick question in the back.
Yeah, do you have any examples of any guys using these like for, say, high action or big areas, kind of like maybe like Sports Illustrated doing basketball games, something like that?
You just lead me to my next point every time, don't you? Right now on the Canon Digital Learning Center, which is learn.usa.canon.com. Or just do a Google search or Yahoo search, Bing, whatever your options are. If you go to the Canon Digital Learning Center, as of this week, Bruce Dorn and Tyler Stapleford both put on their real-world action shooting with 600 Speedlights. Tyler is one of our explorers of light photographers who lives in Aspen and shoots for the covers for Cabela's and does a bunch of shooting for outdoor magazines. And he did a lot of stuff with outdoor speedlights, radio, with downhill skiers. Bruce Dorn's a well-known photographer and videographer, And he has a bunch of tutorials on there too of also that's kind of walking through the flashes themselves with sample pictures and stuff. So little videos that you can watch on the Digital Learning Center. Does the transmitter offer anything other than buying 2 flashes? The transmitter is smaller, it's lighter, runs on 2 AA batteries versus and this is just being kind of bigger and heavier and a little more top heavy. So there's no benefit or downfall. The benefit of here is when you have an extra flash. 2, you do have an autofocus assist light with the front of the flash head being that where the transmitter doesn't have the AF assist light. It's just the transmitter is just going to be a little smaller, a little more compact. So, and it's half the price too. So.
Also with the older cameras, you said you could just use the cable.
Right, if you want to do the link shooting, remote shooting system, if you just want to put a 600 on a 7D, you're fine. Everything works fine. 60D is fine, it's also no problem. But if you want to do the link shooting where you have multiple cameras shoot up and set up, the 60D actually, the cable isn't compatible with the 60D because the 60D has the smaller remote jack plug. It's the little R3 plug versus the N3 plug. The question was, can a pop-up flash be used as a slave? No, it cannot. I had to check myself on that. The pop-up flash on the T3i, Rebel T3i, Rebel T4i, EOS 60D, and EOS 7Ds. The pop-up flash can be a master. So it can trigger any of our current flashes that are in the lineup.
Infrared.
Infrared only. Check out the Digital Learning Center if you have any questions on flashes.
Canon still making the Mark III and Mark IV?
The Canon is no longer making the Mark III or Mark IV, no.
For more information, please visit us online, give us a call, or stop by our New York City Superstore. You can also connect with us on the web.